Good evening. All right. Let's see here. We got some background music. Let's try night driving. So I am back in the studio, back making some stuff. 1 second. All right. Yeah. And I had some major laptop mishaps. Man, had sent it out for some repairs, and that shit got totally lost. The company that was repairing my laptop, they lost it, and it had been 2 weeks, and they had to send it back to me. Or I'm sorry, they had to give me a so here I am using my old laptop, and this is where we're at. But that's not what we're here to talk about. My laptop woes. We're here to talk about how men don't have problems with women. And it's a pretty simple concept. But it's unfortunately like a lot don't understand this. A lot don't understand how this happens. Let me get back to the comment section. Okay. So it's pretty simple. So let me lay it out there. Okay. Men, not males. Okay, males have lots of problems with women, but men don't have problems with women. And that's because men either have people who are following their program or they're not there. So that means you never see any problems. You never experience any sort of major problems. Because if she's there, she's following. And if she's not following, she's not there. It's pretty simple. It's a really, really simple formula. The only way that this can be ever screwed up is if you're afraid to lose a woman. That's the only time this gets screwed up. And you'd be surprised at how that one little thing will mess everything up. It will make everything tons more difficult than it actually is. So if you let go of any kind of fear of having this woman in your life, of losing this woman in your life, then you're not going to be able to proceed forward. And this is like the crux of most of the guys that I work with. Most of the guys that I work with, they have this problem. What's up, Uncle Guns? Good to see you, buddy. Most of the guys that I work with have this singular problem that's inside them, and this fear of loss. And there's a number of ways that people deal with this, and you hear people say, well, just have more women, right? Just have more than one woman that you're talking to. And let's just be fair. Most guys are not talking to more than one woman. I mean, in a very real way. They're not talking to women in a very real way. In the sense that the women are actually very much interested in spending time with him. They're few and far between, the guys who are like this. So, and that's totally fine. Like, it's totally fine to be interested in only dealing with one woman at a time. So don't fall into this whole trap of, oh, in order to be a man, you have to have a roster of women, or you have to be talking to all these girls. Like, you don't really have to. It's totally fine if you just want to be dealing with one woman. I don't care, right? But you absolutely have to be okay with losing her. And so you got to kind of watch out for, back in the day, they called this oneitis, in like the beginning, early twilight years of Red Pill. Yeah, there was oneitis. That was a thing. So, if you watch out, you don't get into oneitis, where basically oneitis is where you're taking this one woman that's in your life and you're considering her extra special. And when you consider her extra special and just beyond just being a woman, then she can take hold of like extra space in your mind. And this will start changing your behaviors. It'll start changing your thoughts. It'll start changing your decision-making, how you feel about yourself. And all these things just slowly start shifting over and weighing more and more and more on her presence. And this is is really going to affect things in the long run, because as more weight rests on her, eventually it's going to give way and fall. And then once that falls, in that weight is also your fear. And so it'll all come crumbling down, and then you're going to be all messed up and crying in your bowl of cereal, and you're going to be just a hot mess. And the cure, doesn't necessarily mean have more women, because you could feel the same way about having more women in your life. So if you've got this issue with attachment and you rest a lot of your emotional security in those attachments, it's going to be present whether you have one woman or 6 women. You know what I'm saying? Like, it doesn't matter. So again, the game's all about you. So, hey, King Ken, good to see you, man. So, yeah, so you got to watch out for that shit. But once you're okay, once you're set in the ways of this, and there's no real quick method of getting to this point. It's something you have to work on, because a lot of young men are conditioned to be a certain way, or their upbringing has something to do with being this way, or they learn to be this way. They're taught like, oh, you have to be a certain way, like cultural, or your parents, or movies, or whatever. And so it takes some time to sort of deconstruct this. And some people just do it through repetition. So they continuously get their heart broken, and then they learn to not grasp at women so tightly. And the funny thing is, and again, I mention this a lot in my streams, the ironies of the game. One of those ironies is that the less you grasp at a woman, the more you're able to actually hold her. It's kind of like a cat. I think other people have mentioned this about how women are like cats. And so if you're a cat person, you've had cats before, if you grab a cat and force it to sit in your lap, it'll want to run away for the most part, unless it's like a lazy piece of shit. Like my cat won't do that. He's fucking fat and lazy. But if any other normal cat, if you pick them up and put them on your lap, they'll want to just skitter off and get out of your grasp. But if you just sit and chill and, just do your thing, they'll just come up, hop on your lap. They'll sit there. They'll stay there for a while, and maybe they'll get up and leave. And it's okay if they get up and leave. If you try to stop them and you're like, no, kitty, you're sitting here on my lap, God damn it, it's going to make them want to leave even more. So it's like the more you try to grip onto women, the more they want to get away from you. Unless they themselves have some sort of attachment thing going on where they like having a possessive sort of guy in their life. And there are women who are like that. There are women who really do enjoy having a possessive boyfriend. Like, it makes them feel valued. But that's few and far between. That's not all women. That's not regular at all. So note that if you got this in you, it's something that you're going to have to work on. Because you're literally going to drive the women, you're going to squeeze the women out of your life. So, but once you're okay with this sort of stuff, once you're okay with just letting their existence be when they're in your life, whether it's one day, one evening, or weeks, or months, or years, it doesn't matter how much time goes by, and you maintain that sort of mindset. When it is time, if it happens, for her to no longer be in your life, then it's not as detrimental as it would have been. And that needs to be dealt with. That needs to be handled and understood long before, so that when you are a man and dealing with a woman, it's no longer a problem. There's no problems that show up. Because again, if they do crop up and she does not take corrective behavior, then you can just dismiss her, and it's not a big deal. So you only see like a little glimpse of behavior that you don't like, and then she's gone. So it's never really a big deal. But you guys should also understand that there's but I mentioned corrective behavior. Now, I don't advise using corrective behavior when you're recently speaking with a woman, because in my world, this is sort of a privilege. It's a privilege to have me correct you, because that means you have my attention enough, where I give a shit enough, where I want to weed out poor behavior and usher in proper behavior. So in order for me to do that, that's somewhat of an investment on my part. So I'm not going to invest that part of my mind until I know that you're ready. You're ready to absorb the information, until I've deemed and understood that she's the type of person who's willing and able to receive. Willing and able to receive the information, willing to change, willing to look at herself the way I see her, so that she can adjust certain things in order to be with me. And it has to be open willingness. It can't be something that you're forcing her to. Again, like putting the cat on your lap and saying, sit and stay. It has to be something that's open and willing for them to join. So it's nothing that you can really force upon a woman. And if you do it too early on, it's going to really be off-putting. She's going to be scared off. And so there has to be certain levels of trust involved first. And then you also have to know what you're doing. So you have to be very observant of certain behaviors, which means you have to have your emotions in check. You can't let your emotions run away with you, and then you find yourself in love and you're not seeing things properly, you're not able to think properly, and you're not able to make decisions properly. And so that all has to happen beforehand. So, and I'm not saying like be cold. I'm not saying be just like this cold motherfucker who, is just like a robot. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying that your emotions shouldn't be driving your decision making. They shouldn't be driving how you perceive her. Okay. And then if that's not in the way, then you can more easily make decisions. You can more easily guide the situation, to guide the relationship, and more easily make corrections. Because if you're going to make a correction in somebody, you cannot have the fear of them leaving. You can't have any fear of them getting upset. And you also have to trust in what it is that you're wanting to correct. So let's say you're with a woman for, some weeks and maybe getting into some months. And this should be edging into like girlfriend's territory. Like I wouldn't bother trying to correct behavior of a woman who is not my woman. Like if it's just some girl that I'm fucking every now and then and we hang out, maybe we have a good time every now and then, like that's not enough. That's not enough for me to invest my teaching, to invest my guidance. So I'm not going to bother with that. It'll be much more relaxed and we just have fun. We have sex, we, get drinks or whatever, and it's not a big deal. But if things progress into girlfriend territory, that means she's done certain prerequisites, has earned my attention, earned my awareness of her behavior. So now I'm watching her in a different sort of way. I'm not just like sitting back and like, oh great, I'm so happy that you're in my life, we're just gonna have a good time and like fuck around and be boyfriend and girlfriend and hold hands and skip around town. Like that's not really what's happening. It actually becomes more serious because now you've proven to me that you want me to pay attention to you. And paying attention to you isn't just figuring out what your likes and dislikes are. It's really looking at your behaviors and making note of your motivators, both for things you like to do and things you don't like to do. Behaviors that are not fitting for my program, or behaviors that are fitting for my program that I want to see more of. So it's a lot. And this I'm not trying to be prescriptive and saying you must be this way, but I don't see any downside, except for the fact if you're not the type who likes to observe and figure out and keep things organized, then maybe it's not for you. But I've seen too many relationships fall apart because guys are just flying by the seat of their pants, or more so flying by the seat of their dick and their feelings. And then things can just easily fall apart. They can slow down very easily. They can lose structure. They just, it's like an amorphous blob. But if you have an understanding of what you want to see and a reason why, then it makes things a lot easier. And then you can utilize certain methods of teaching in order to bring about more of what you see and things that you do like, and weed out the behavior you don't like, so to summarize that part, just don't bother trying to teach behavior to a woman who's not your woman, a woman who has not campaigned to be in your life and says, hey, I want to be here. I'm into this. Pick me. Okay. I know some of you guys hate that phrase, pick me, and some women hate pick me, but I like pick me's because they're like saying, hey, I want to be chosen. I'm stepping up. This is what I want to do. All right, cool. Like, prove it. And then you can't leave the prove it just open-ended. Okay. You got to have something in which for them to prove it to. And I don't know. I get great enjoyment out of it, but that's just me. But to the title of the stream, through this, you don't have as many problems, because it's like the walls of the channel, if you like imagine like a channel where water flows, it's shoring up those walls by having an understanding of what you want to see and what you don't want to see. And so maybe at first the channel's just carved out of soil, but after a while you can start laying in concrete, and you can start laying in steel girders, and then more concrete, and it becomes like a really serious channel or an aqueduct for that water to flow through. And it takes a lot of understanding. It takes a certain level of education and a willingness to implement this. Because if you don't have that willingness, that means you still have fear. So if you're ever correcting someone, you're going to be a little bit hesitant to correct that behavior, because you're going to be like, oh man, I'm afraid she's going to get upset. I'm afraid she's going to dump me. I'm afraid she's going to leave. I'm afraid she's going to go, I don't know, like suck some other guy's dick. Like, if you're worried of any of that stuff, it's going to completely ruin everything. Like, you might as well not short up anything, and you're still just sitting there with a soil aqueduct. And that's no way to move through things, and so this is some of the stuff that I get into a lot with my training, is helping guys create this system, because once you have a system, it makes things a hell of a lot easier. It's kind of like you go to the gym. Like I used, a long time ago, many moons ago, I used to be a personal trainer. And I remember this one client, she came in and we're sitting down and having our talk before she signs up for her program. And because I want to know where her goals are and all this stuff and whatever, her lifestyle. And I said, so what's your goal? And she looks at me and she says, I want to be hot. I'm like, okay, can we get a little more specific? And so through conversation, we actually whittled it down to something that's truly measurable about her weight and her dress size. And I don't remember the numbers at the time, but let's say she wanted to drop 2 dress sizes and lose 30 pounds. That's something that's measurable, because we can actually measure the weight and measure the actual dress sizes in inches. And from there, we could figure out her timing, her meal plan, and a structure for her workout program. And so now we have a complete system where we can measure, and there's micro measurements. So within that, we can see okay, how many sets is she doing on, say, like a bench press? And what can she do now? What's the goal ahead? What are we trying to go for? And we can measure all of that along the way. so you can see how quickly progress is happening and what body parts are faltering, what needs a little bit extra attention, or different exercises to get you closer or get her closer to the goals that she wanted. So it's just like that. Like a relationship, like again, like people just think that like relationships are these things where you just kind of go into it and hope for the best. It's like, you're cute, I'm cute, we like having sex, we have some similar interests, let's just do this. It's like, whoa, how are you able to progress? How do you even know it's getting any better? By how you feel? Really? That's how you know your relationship's getting better, is because you're feeling good about it? Don't you know that emotions are transient, right? They're always going like this, always in and out. Sometimes they're active, sometimes they're dead, sometimes they go up, sometimes they go down. They fluctuate tremendously. That is a terrible form of measurement. Okay, that'd be like using your emotions in the gym as your like, oh, I feel great today. Okay, I must be making progress. No, you just feel good. That's it. Like your weight hasn't changed, your dress size hasn't changed. You know, the whatever kind of weights you're moving around hasn't changed. So when you're so this is some of the stuff that I help guys figure out when working with me, is we create a system that can actually be measured, where there's something where you can observe the progress and you can actually see where your relationship is going and how it's going and how to make it better and how to continually ramp things up. Now, again, that requires more management on your part. It requires you to have the ability to, stick with it, to stick with this stuff. Let's change this. All right. So yeah, and this isn't, I haven't heard anything like this about, you hear people talking about like getting programs and getting people on your program and this, that program, but nobody really talks about like a structure. Like there's a program, like you go to a college, there's a program. You go to a job, there's a program. You go to any kind of training, like anything where there is progressive resistance and progressive learning, there's a program. You have to have a structure by which you're learning things, measuring things, developing things, and separating the wheat from the chaff, cutting the fat off of things so that you can progress and make things better and better and better. And I've not heard anybody in this space talking about how there's a system to this. They're just saying very generic things like, oh yeah, you gotta have good game, you gotta have good mouthpiece. And this you absolutely do. You have to know how to talk. You have to know how to think. But there's no specifics that I know of talking about program design, to where it's like you can have a sheet of paper and say, okay, this is it. I understand it. I know how to move things through. And it cuts down on bullshit by like 1,000%. It makes things so much easier that, like you really don't, sure, you have to manage it. So there's no autopilot, but certain things, say early on, that become learned and ingrained, that goes on autopilot. And the things you're working on, and then there's things up ahead that you're going to be implementing and bringing in, So let's just check here. Oh yeah, Instant Classic. Good to see you, man. Yeah, I had some serious laptop problems. I'm using my old laptop for this, and they lost my shit in the mail during a repair service. And it's fucking gone. Luckily, I made a backup, so everything, all of my illustrations and my videos and stuff, that's all saved. So, yeah. So it's like you're never gonna really hear, when you're a man with a system, you're never going to hear a whole lot of complaining. You're not going to be getting into fights. You're maybe disagreements here and there, but like, you're not going to have any fights. You're not going to have, any sort of contentious behavior. You're not going to have any swearing or just no bullshit. Like, there's literally no bullshit that goes on. And it's very easy to get bored. Like, if you've got like a tight moving machine, it's easy to get bored, which is why creativity is so important. Not only to keep yourself stimulated, but also the woman, because women love variety. I've got like these 4 pillars that they're mainly about the bedroom, but the 4 pillars also work in a relationship, and it's the dive method. So it's dominance, immersion, variety, and emotion. And if you're able to kind of imagine these on like sliders on like a soundboard, okay, you can raise them up and down in different ways. You can rise up the dominance, but also the emotion, or lower the dominance and bring up the immersion and the variety. And so there's different things you can play around with that can keep things loose, keep things creative, keep things flowing. And I think laziness and what's the word? But just getting adapted to your situation too much really, really drives down relationships, where you're just like, just don't give a shit anymore. And guys, like, it's fair, it's understood. Like, guys get really amped up and excited about the chase, and they like to they like the excitement of getting to know a new woman and chase her down and get her interested and having sex and doing all this fun shit. And then you get into normalcy, and then a lot of guys, they become apathetic. And apathy is a terrible, terrible disease. And so you really have to give a shit mainly about your own creation, because the relationship, if you're leading it, that means you're the creator. And so if you're letting things just kind of like get sloppy and fall apart and not fun anymore, that's on you. That's on you. You've let it become boring because maybe you're boring. Maybe you need to learn some things. Maybe you need to figure out a way to get yourself excited. It's like, I've been an artist for over 30 years, and I've been drawing a lot for a long fucking time. I have to come up with ways to get myself excited about doing stuff, especially now that I'm so good, I can do shit half asleep with my left hand. So it's no longer a challenge anymore. So I have to think of ways to get myself excited, aside from the money that I'm paid. So, the same sort of thing is in your interactions with women, and I know like a lot of you guys are not there yet. Like, you're not in relationships, and that really sucks. That's what I'm trying to do here. I'm trying to help guys get into relationships, because I know the vast majority of you actually want them. There's very few of you. It's much of a big game that a lot of guys want to talk about, want to be a player and have a roster and all this shit. No, you don't. If I said, okay, you can have a roster of women that you're going to have to fucking micromanage for the next couple of years, or you can have one solid girlfriend to micromanage for the next couple of years, most guys are going to pick that girlfriend if they could have that choice. And, and that's totally fine. But it's important to be honest with yourself of what it is that you want, and, I was reading those stats. I can't remember what came up with those stats, but guys between like the 63% of guys between 18 and 30 are single. And then I also read that 50% of that 63%, half of those guys are virgins. So, and that's no knock. It's just something very surprising to me. It tells me that there's something going on. There's something going on with the minds of men. And, it's a mess. It's a serious fucking mess, but you really just have to, stop really giving a shit. One of the things that I'd said, on the show with Miles and Carrie. It was about insecurities and like why guys aren't moving the way they should be moving. And I think one of the biggest things is that they're afraid that the woman is going to see them the way they see themselves. And this is one of the biggest things that goes on in guys that are new to dating or haven't gone out into the dating world, very often or enough. And so there's that fear. There's that fear and it comes from having like a low self-image, low self-esteem. And I'm not saying that you should think that you are, a god amongst men, but this is certainly something that has to be fixed if you've got low self-esteem. Like you really should. You don't have to be way on the other end, but you shouldn't be the dirt either. So, learn how to have a healthy self-esteem. And if you don't know what that is, if you don't have any idea of how to get there, just get in touch with me. We'll have a chat, because you can't get any of this shit. What I'm talking about, like you won't get. If you do get into a relationship, you'll treat it like medicine, unconsciously. Unconsciously, you'll be treating this like medicine and using her to feel better about yourself. And that's no way to go through things, right? You want her to just feel solid in you because you feel solid in you. And it's not a front. It's not you puffing up your chest or, blowing up your own head. It's just a very grounded, real truism. And when she can feel that, that's when things really take off. Because that is like the beginnings of trust, when her instinct tells her just by feeling alone that she can trust you in your presence because you trust you in your presence. Makes sense? So, it's like you can't get into any of that cool shit, any of that fun stuff. You can't get into designing a program and leading and the enjoyment that comes from that until you've dealt with who you think you are. And a lot of guys, unfortunately, think that they're not good enough. A lot of guys think that they're pieces of shit, or they're invisible, or nobody cares about them, or whatever. There's a lot, and that really, really needs to be sorted out. And if you need therapy, that's fine. If you want to contact me about talking over these things, that's fine too. But I can tell you, when you start progressing through and you become just that much more settled into who you are, it becomes more dense. And then it starts creating its own gravitational field. Kind of like how like stars are born. And the star becomes more and more, or maybe it's when they die, they become really, really dense. And so your gravitational field will increase and things start coming to you. Women start coming to you. Now, I'm not saying it in the way where you can just go to a bar and post up and, girls just start flocking to you. It's more your energy in the sense that they feel more comfortable being around you because you no longer need them for that medicine that I was talking about. You don't need them to feel good because you already feel good. And then it's so much easier to bring in creativity, to bring in dominance, to bring in immersion, to bring in variety, to bring in emotion. And then you can just play with those sliders. And it's easy, it's fun. And basically, since they're sliders, they're not switches, they're sliders. That means there's limitless things you can do. Limitless. So, many of you guys are probably wondering like what immersion is. I guess you're probably familiar with dominance and variety, but immersion is when you are conducting. I was talking with a client about this just the other night, and it's creating a psychological environment for yourself and for the woman that's in front of you. And so when it becomes so believable, the feeling is so real, this brings her into it. She becomes immersed in the experience and no longer a detached observer of these things. She's actually in it, partaking in the experience. And so it's creating the psychological environment. And the way this came up, we were talking about dirty talk. And, he had some questions about dirty talk, and because he's a dominant guy, and he's going way off and exploring all of this stuff. He's gotten into BDSM communities. He got into tantra communities. He's been studying like a motherfucker, and really proud of this guy, because he's not only just worked with me, but he's decided to take his initiative to learn and grow on his own and go beyond what I'm teaching and get really involved in these communities and meeting people and having experiences. So, but primarily he's more what we call primals, primals in the lifestyle. They kind of get into that just very base, like animalistic sort of vibe, and that's with him naturally. But he realizes that it's a good skill to know in terms of playing around in the bedroom. Again, variety is having ability to talk dirty. And I was like, yeah, I could give you a bunch of phrases to say, but that's a whole lot different when you've created an environment such that her mind is primed to receive the dirty talk in that kind of context. So you're creating the context, which will then shift her mind into that context. So then the words that you're saying fit perfectly. I hope that makes sense. So real effective dirty talk, or any kind of talk, could be sensual talk, or romantic talk. It doesn't matter the kind of talk, but it matters the context that you're creating. And this can be done through scenes or not. It can be just through your presence and how you feel like showing up. And that is much more effective than just having like a series of phrases that you say that sound cool, right? And those might get by, you know what I mean? But it's more like when you're hungry and you go for a candy bar versus having an actual meal. And it's a lot more effective on the woman's part as well. It's much more effective on the woman's part as well, because now she's just not hearing something. She's immersed in the experience because you've created a context. You created a psychological environment to make it a much more immersive experience for her. Okay. And this can be done in very creative ways, and doesn't have to be. It can be non-creative ways with just your words and your presence. But you can bring in, you can create whole sort of scenes and attitudes and things like that. So that's what immersion is. The emotion part, this is, I guess the easiest way to explain it is romance. And guys, we are the creators of romance, but women are the consumers of it. And so they love that shit. They absolutely love romance. I've talked about it a lot, like the romance novels, largest genre of book sold worldwide. The only genre of book that outsells these smutty romance novels with Fabio on the cover are religious texts. That's it. So it's religious texts, then romance novels that you see in the drugstore. So that just goes to show like that women love this stuff. They love having their emotions tweaked in the right kind of way. And so the emotion, yeah, it's romance, but it can be affected by the other things as well. So like the D, I, and the V. So you can have, say, if we're talking about, lifestyle stuff, it could be something around the world of degradation, where there's degrading things going on. Now it's a little weird that I'm bringing it up like totally out of context, but when you're in it and you've created this this immersive environment, the emotion is then the feeling of lowness, the feeling of degradation, which to the right person makes them feel amazing. It's really, it's wild like that. It becomes a very cathartic experience for her. For those that get off on degradation, it could be praise. And she could be someone who's a complete praise slut. And she gets off, she becomes extremely aroused by being praised, either physically or verbally. A lot of times it's verbally. So the emotion becomes this thing that you can really tweak and play with. And there's so many different emotions that can be messed with. You know, there's joy, there's fear, there's anger, there's embarrassment. There's so many emotions that can be played with. And so in scene creation, you know, I also teach a system where you can basically create your theme and then your style. And then from there, you can go on and create full-on scenes. And it's like writing a play almost. So you can kind of figure out like, okay, what's the tone and the attitude of the play? And then from there, you can concoct a whole scene. And guys, like, yeah, if you're into, you know, if you're in the lifestyle, then this is something you're familiar with. But if you're not, and you bring this into your regular sex life, like, she's not going to know what hit her. She is not going to know what hit her. However, if it does get into anything that's like even somewhat risky, you do have to talk about it first. You know, if you're dealing with any kind of rope play or knives or breath play or impact or anything like that, it's pretty important that you have a talk beforehand and say, you know, you can kind of, before you get into that, you can mess around a little bit, have like a couple sex sessions and allude towards these things, and then talk about them afterwards. And she's like, oh, what do you think? She's like, oh, I really liked it when you spanked me. It's like, oh, well, how do you feel about other kinds of impact play? And she's like, well, what do you mean? What's impact play? And you can talk to her about what impact play is and what that entails. That might turn out, oh, I've never done that before, but I've thought about it. And you say, well, you know, I've been working on this thing, I've been working on this scene. And you can walk her through it, and she'll be like, wow, that sounds really exciting. When do you want to do that? And so it becomes this creative experience that you can do between the two of you. And, you know, for those that are not initiated, the woman can become extremely addicted to this stuff. You know, it's just another one of those, you know, to bite on Steve, like it's another one of those drugs that you can bring to her. And because it involves so many layers, it involves so many layers. So it's not just being, just being dominant, because that's only like one kind of flavor of emotion that she's going to feel. But if you bring in like all these other things, it becomes something that's not regularly experienced. And then it's like, whoa, like what's that guy all about? And you become, you know, more of this well-rounded with lots of variety for her to kind of experience through you. And then through that, she gets to experience a part of herself that she may only fantasized about or had no idea even existed. And, you know, if you do get into a relationship and you start exploring this stuff further and further, then there becomes an even greater bond, which is why I am fully in disagreement with this whole fucking pair bonding nonsense. Pair bonding nonsense, because emotions will trump everything. How she feels, how you bring her to certain feelings, and you know, whether you're using anchors or not, you can become the anchor. You know, and I'll talk about the use of anchors at another time, but and I'm talking psychological anchors. So if you become the anchor, and this strong emotional anchor to you will far surpass any sort of sexual experience she's had. So fuck that, like, oh, the guy's left DNA in her, or in, his big dick imprinted on her psychology, and because he's a super Chad. It's not like that. Her emotions will crush all of that stuff, provided that they're being stimulated in the right kind of way. And and then you combine that with having no fear of losing her. Man, it's like you've got like a double barrel shotgun. It becomes extremely, extremely potent, extremely powerful. So, understands that, when you got your program, you're stimulating emotionally. You really don't have problems. You really, really don't. You don't see them. And if they do crop up and, the lady's been in your life long enough, that's when you can offer corrective behavior. And oftentimes, if you're doing it right, it doesn't need to be checked. It doesn't need to have serious corrective behavior. Corrective measures are only taken for more egregious behaviors that stand out, that are definitely going against things that you've laid out prior, that she was fully informed about, but has chosen to or impulsively went against. And that's when you can bring in some corrective measures. But other than that, the best ways are through positive reinforcement. So you can get rid of bad behavior by praising and rewarding the behavior you do want to see. And then more of those behaviors will take the place of the bad ones. It's really quite easy. You just have to be on top of it. You have to mentally be observant and on top of these things. So, you get a girl into your life and you're implementing these things, plus all that shit that I talked about with the dive method, with a learning program and her emotional immersion. Dude, yeah, there's going to be pair bonding. It's going to be pair bonding to you. And it's not going to have anything to do with your dick. Because I've got guys who don't have sex with their well, not their girlfriends, but with their subs. They don't have sex with their subs. It's just a complete DS relationship. And these women are full on addicted to them. Absolutely addicted. And some of them aren't even in physical proximity to one another. They're just online relationships. And every morning it's like, bang, on the dot, 7 a.m. Good morning, sir. How may I serve you today? So, and what, you think that she's never had Chad Thundercock before? Of course she has. But the Dom knows what he's doing. He knows how to have influence. And she is pair bonded to him and hasn't even touched her. So forget all that shit. Like, the guys who are making those studies aren't who I'm talking about. They're not even close. They're trying to understand things from a biological perspective and thinking the biology affects the emotions, and it doesn't. It's the other way around. The emotions affect the biology. See, guys come to that assumption because that's how males operate. Okay? This is why males fall in love after having sex with a woman one time. I was talking to this dude on Reddit, and he fell in love with this girl. He met up with her 5 times and slept with her once and fell in love. Because males, their emotions follow their actions. So it's biology then emotions for males. Men, it's not. It's a completely different, whole other way of going about things. Women are emotions then biology. So the biology follows how they feel. And if you're altering this and wielding this in the right kind of way, her body will follow. So it's much more effective to focus, but it's a lot harder, okay? Much more effective to focus on her mind and her feelings than her body. Because, it's like, unless you don't give a shit, and that's totally fine. That's totally fine. If you don't give a shit about this stuff, you're like, you know what? I could care less. I just want to bang chicks. I don't care about them, worshiping me, really getting involved in my life, if you don't care about that stuff, then fine. Like, I don't care. And you just want to fuck, totally cool. But if you do want to get into a relationship and you do want to have a woman who's really excited and, basically can worship the ground that you walk on and is happy to be there, then, you absolutely have to learn how to affect her mind and how to affect her emotions. And then after that, her body just follows. Her body just follows suit. So forget all that bullshit. Forget all that study bullshit. Forget the fucking pair bonding nonsense. Forget the DNA nonsense. I think that was found in one corpse. I think a corpse was exhumed. I think looked in her brain or something like that. They looked in the corpse's brain and found DNA from a male. And I think that's where they extrapolated that a man's DNA gets left inside a woman's pussy. Fucking crazy. So these guys, you'll come up with all kinds of crazy shit to justify the fact that you're afraid of women. You're afraid to get them and you're afraid to lose them. So it's like you guys are like stuck between a rock and a hard place. Much like those red pilled dudes, like they fucking hate women, but at the same time they're obsessed with them. When you're a man, it's just you. That's it. It's just you. And then it becomes a little bit more than you when the woman has ensured her ability to get on your program. But it still has to be about you, because if it's not, then, the program falls apart. But it becomes a little bit more than you, because you've got this person who is willing and able and happily, involving themselves in what you've created. So much easier. So much easier. And instead of being tossed around by this and that, because the guys who are trying to figure women out. See, that's the thing. That's the other fucking great thing. When you're on my side of the street, you don't have to figure women out. There's nothing to figure out, because the more you figure out you, then the more they're going to want to figure you out. And if they like what they figured out, they're just going to follow it. That's it. You don't have to figure out anything. You don't have to try to understand their psychology or try to understand female nature or any of that bullshit. You don't have to figure out anything except more of what you need to do, more of what you want to do. So it's like that. But yeah, these guys, they're trying to figure out so much of things that are constantly changing, because you're dealing with women, and women are flow. They're constantly changing. Their bodies run on cycles. Their minds run on cycles. Everything is in constant flux with women. I think if men could transport their minds or their consciousness into a body of a woman for a month, they'd probably lose their fucking minds, because there's so much change constantly. Having their emotions go like this, their hormones going like this, their bodies going like this, the perception of reality going like this, they'd probably lose their fucking mind. So, they're trying to figure out that. They're like looking at this thing and they're like, oh, I got to figure this out, this female nature. And they look pretty bad, and they want them so bad. They want women so bad. So they're like drawn to it. They're drawn to figure this out, and they can't, because it's something that's ever changing. It's not there to be figured out. And if you do figure it out, what the fuck are you going to do with it? You think that's going to give you a leg up? Because you still have no game. You still have no program. So what are you going to do? Now you've figured out women. It doesn't turn you into a boss of any kind. It doesn't turn you into a G. Nothing. You just know some shit. Right? Like you could study I love motorcycle racing. You could study everything there is to know about motorcycle racing. You could even get into the physics side of it and study the physics and be like the top knowledge in the world about the physics behind motorcycle racing. this will not make you a better racer at all if you never get on the bike. And then there's guys out there who are complete knuckleheads when it comes to science, but they will fuck a track up. And that's those guys who are, in the dating game who are like, they don't know anything about female nature. They're just like, I don't know. I just go fucking talk to them. I do my thing and we fuck. And you're like, how do you do that? I don't like, what did you say to her? It's like, I don't know. I just introduced myself. I told her she was cute and gave her my number. But what'd you say? Nothing. So it's like these guys are trying to study this thing that's like ever changing, ever flowing, ever moving, and then looking for other nerds who are also lacking in game, who've done studies to then back up what they're thinking and feeling already about what they're perceiving, to kind of make it justify that they're not moving. Because they don't have to justify their desire. Like that's already known. It's like, I'm a guy, I like women. All right, that's biologically makes sense. But they have to come up with something that they can rest on to justify why they're not doing something. And they'll get into female psychology. They'll talk about their behavior. They'll talk about the ills of marriage. They'll talk about getting cheated on. They'll pull up statistics about infidelity. They'll pull up statistics about OnlyFans girls and porn stars and court cases and male suicide rates and all this stuff. All of that there is just copes for fear. That's all it is. They're just copes. You're coping because you're afraid of women. And you're like, no, I'm not. I'm afraid to get destroyed in family court. No, you're afraid of women. That's a cope. Like what you just said is a cope. You're scared. But it's like, I don't want to like harp on it and like kind of make you feel bad, but it's not that big of a deal. Like, honestly. Like that's like being scared of squirrels. And I don't mean that in a derogatory way that like women are, some lower life form. But it's like when you look at the situation in that way, it kind of diffuses fear. And you have to use the hatchet. And I've mentioned this before. You have to use the hatchet on yourself. And because I could say, why are you afraid of squirrels? And then the first thing that these guys will say is, yeah, but, and then fill in the blank. Yeah, but what about these modern women? And it's the yeah, but that needs to be hatcheted away. Yeah, but just stop the thought immediately. Cut it out of your mind immediately. If it pops up again right afterwards, cut it out. And cut out that repetitive thing, because what that's doing is it's placating to the emotions that are already there that are afraid to move. And like I said before, you're not going to be able to get to any of the good stuff. You're not going to be able to get to anything that you actually enjoy. You're not going to be able to get to anything that you can be creative in and have some pride that you've created until you deal with your fear, your insecurity, your lack of self-worth, and all that shitty stuff. It's there because if it wasn't, you'd be doing something different. If it wasn't, you wouldn't be fucking addicted to porn. You wouldn't be, sitting at home on, a Thursday, Friday night. You'd be out enjoying your life. You'd be out sharing yourself with other people, going to social events instead of fucking watching Netflix, right? Or sitting here watching my ass on YouTube or other YouTubers. Like, you'd be out having fun, and it doesn't cost a whole lot. Like, I mean, here in New York, it does. Fucking a cocktail is like anywhere from like $13 to $15 for one cocktail, but whatever. It's like, treat yourself, go do fun shit. But again, it's like that self-esteem stuff that's going to lead you to doing this fun shit in order to meet women. So it's a very tangled mess, but I'm going to leave you with this. Cause it's been about an hour. You can't let up on it. don't let up on the kind of dealing with and beating that shit to a pulp. That part of inside you that wants to give in. It reminds me of this very sad scene in this movie called The Never-Ending Story. It's probably beyond most of your years, but it's a great like 80s fantasy movie. And takes place in a book, which is weird. But anyway, so there's this character and he's got this horse named Artax, and they had to go talk to this ancient turtle to, this giant ancient turtle to get some, sacred wisdom or whatever. I can't remember. But the turtle lives in this swamp, and it's called like the Swamp of Despair or something along those lines. And the swamp causes you to get filled with despair. And if you fall prey to it, you will sink down into the mud and then drown. And, Atreyu, who was the hero, he had this horse named Artax, and they were going through the swamp to meet the turtle, and the Atreyu could resist it, but Artax couldn't. And it was one of the Swamp of Sorrows. Yes. Thank you, Uncle Guns. And, it was one of the saddest scenes ever when I was a kid. It like killed me watching this horse, because you never really see animals dying in movies, if you notice that. Like, you never see dogs getting fucked up. You don't see horses getting, because it's just people like, oh no, like it's too precious. But yeah, so you're watching this horse, like, just no cutscenes or anything like that. It's just like going down into the mud and drowning, and like Atreyu is like crying. He's like, no, fight it, like fight the fucking despair, fight the sorrow. You can do it. And he's just trying his best, and the horse just keeps sinking slowly down into the mud and fucking drowns. And it's like, that is the shit you have to fight. You have to be on this all the time and challenge it. Because if you don't, it's just going to sit there, and then it slowly grows. And, before you know it, you're fucking my age and you've done nothing, like Steve talks about time all the time, where he's like, the ball is dropping very soon. Like, in a matter of days, it's going to be 2024. And it's like, what the fuck have you done? Like, has there really been any kind of change in who you are between, 22 and 23? Is there going to be any kind of change from 2023 to 24? And it's like, yeah, okay, you might step up your gym game. You might step up your career. You might do this, you might do that. But how do you feel about yourself? That's the only thing that really matters. Because it's like, you could go through these motions and you're not going to really give a shit. You're really not. It makes me think of Fight Club, like the beginning parts of Fight Club where, the main character, he had all this stuff, but he just didn't give a shit because he was so disconnected with who he was. But what's funny is that he had to bifurcate his personality, basically created a split personality disorder in order to actually connect with himself. I don't know. Maybe that's what you need to do. So, things to think about. If any of you have any questions, you want to talk about insecurities, you want to talk about confidence, you want to talk about dealing with your own swamp of sorrows, you want to talk about programs, you want to talk about how to manage your relationships, you want to talk about creativity in the bedroom, whatever it is, give me a message, shoot me a message on Instagram. All of my info is on the About section here on YouTube, and we can have a chat. First call is free, so there's nothing stopping you. Okay, and then also my Calendly is there, so you can just choose a calendar time, or we could just figure out a time on our own. All right, I hope this was good for those of you who have been here on the live. I really appreciate you stopping through and listening to me go on about women. And for those of you who are catching it on the replay, I appreciate you as well. And, feel free to contact me. Oh, that's the other thing. I'm running a sale So I'm running a sale on all of my coaching. So my dating course, that's like a full like video pre-recorded dating course, that's 20% off. The link to that is in the link in my bio on Instagram. And then it's the like a dating mastery course or whatever that I named it. And then individual coaching and all the different coaching tiers. So I have like, 1 hour, like a 1 hour purchase, or you can get like a pack of 4 1 hour calls, or a pack of 8 1 hour calls, or the full on training session, which, that it takes like 6 months to a year sometimes. All of that is 20% off. So get on it. It's going to be going until January 1st. And, it'll be heading on to that time. I'll be shooting up a lot of ads for that. So, okay. Thank you all for stopping through. Have yourself a wonderful evening, and I'll catch you guys next time. Peace.